Welcome to Big Freaking Tales. And do I have a tale for you? This will be called Blood, Sweat, and Betrayal. Chapter 1. The ranch was a part of the ever-growing western frontier, where Native Americans roamed the free plains and didn't take kindly to the encroachment of settlers. Not only did you have to deal with them, you'd also find yourself challenged, disrespected, or looked down upon by those of a wealthier position, believing their uppity ways held weight on the lawless open range. Back east that may have counted for something. Out here, though, such ideologies amounted to zilch. Many unmarked graves attested to it. Bullets pierced flesh as easy as blades would slit throats. But I digress. This tale, to a greater extent, is outright despicable and disheartening, obliterating the lines of morals and principles and human decency. We begin this tale with 12-year-old Avery Masters, a boy of colour living on the ranch mentioned, currently carrying a bucket of slop to the pig trough in the sty by his father's barn. The squealing beasts rush for their meal, pushing into each other with greedy recklessness. Young Avery observes them, amused as always by their hungry disregard for one another. Several more buckets would complete the chore, though somewhat strenuous. This was actually one of the highlights of Avery's day. The other most definitely had to be his mother's delicious meals, Ophelia Masters. She could cook with the best of them. There was never a time any food would survive her meals. Scraping the plate became a common occurrence in their household. Avery Sr., his father, oversaw the sheep and the bull used for breeding. Next, he had to feed the chickens, which was boring yet easy. It was cleaning the chicken coop that was the undesirable part. Nothing but feathers and chicken droppings. His father didn't own any horses, but for a fee, he'd house them in his barn, whose general caretaking fell on Avery's young shoulders, along with his one hired hand, William Dunlap. Avery Sr. and William were pretty nifty with firearms too. They'd take Avery hunting with them every Sunday, so he was no stranger to guns or the damage they could cause. Sundays became Avery's favourite day of the week. The morning involved a sermon performed at a neighbouring ranch, open to all God-fearing, unbiased folk seeking the word of the Lord. Afterward, the three would hurry home for their rifles and pistols and pack sandwiches put together by Ophelia, and they'd head off into the woods, not returning till well after sundown. It was at these times young Avery envisioned himself as a man. His father not only made him carry his own provisions, he expected him to keep pace and behave maturely. He learned how to skin, gut, and segment their kills. In relation, Avery Sr. spoke to him about the realities of life, the true harshness of it as well as the joys, breaking Avery's wandering thoughts. His mother chastises him. "Boy, you better get your head out of them clouds before your pa catch you and put a strap to your hide. Finish feeding them pigs and go and see to them horses. We got 2 more in last night." "Whose are they?" he asks, instantly curious. "The banker." "Why?" Ophelia answers, and gives him a strange look, standing with her hands upon her hips. "Just wanted to know is all," he shrugs. "I thought he didn't like our kind." His statement touches on the fact that the banker is white and they're black. "And who told you some nonsense like that?" she presses. "Pa," Avery states matter-of-factly. In a sharp tone, Ophelia fires back, "Well, that goes to show you how much your pa knows." She stares into his eyes until he looks away. "Now go finish your chores." She turns and strides off towards the house. Avery follows his mother's order, but can't help but wonder at her peculiar behaviour. Chapter 2. Entering the barn. His father used to house the horses. Avery feeds and brushes the graceful animals. There were 6 altogether. William was mucking out an empty stall. At one point, Avery stops to ask, "William, can I bother you a bit?" "What is it, Avery?" William pauses also, placing his shovel at a standstill, scoop pointed down. You sure do clean these stalls an awful lot, almost every day, but you don't have to. Avery beats around the bush, unsure of how to talk about the subject troubling his adolescent mind. Offering a light chuckle, William tells him, "When you sleep above something, you tend to want to keep a fresh position." He smiles, because sleeping in the hayloft was a portion of his pay which beat the options. Anyway, sensing Avery's unease, he prods, "You got a quandary you need addressing? I'm all ears, no judgment." In a slightly nervous tone, Avery states, "Pa says Banker Woodrow doesn't like Negroes, but Ma made it seem as if he were wrong. I mean, he's keeping his horses here and all, right?" William, thoughtful yet cautious, admits, "I've pondered that myself. Truthfully, I haven't the faintest idea why, but I know you don't necessarily have to favour people to use 'em. Have you spoken to your pa about it?" "Not yet." He shakes his head in the negative. "Maybe it's just the best situation for Mr. Woodrow. He's a cheap one and your pa doesn't charge much." Avery nods carefully. His intuition and the tone of William's voice carried a wariness of the issue. Well, perhaps the hired hand thought it best not to jump at ghosts and just let sleeping dogs lie. The afternoon arrived, though, and lunch brought young Avery face to face with his father, and subsequently those lying dogs set to stir. "You tend to those new horses, boy?" Avery Sr. asks. "Both of 'em, Pa. I wiped 'em down real good." "That's what I like to hear. You behaving like a man. This'll be yours some day. Now you can go spend the rest of the afternoon with John and Billy." "Yes, sir," young Avery replies, lacking his typical enthusiasm. William, seated at the table too, notices the detached demeanour that Avery Sr. sees as well. "You're looking mighty glum, boy. What's got your britches up your butt? Spit it out." Avery Sr. prods. Young Avery steals a glance at his mother as she sets jars of lemonade on the table for everyone. Ophelia cuts in before he can respond. "Quit using foul language at this here supper table. It'll rub off on him, Pa. The last thing I need is a foul-mouthed child scampering around like he ain't got the sense he was born with." Avery Sr. then teases, "Honey Bunch, I have to disagree. In no way is but foul language. Us, on the other hand, may have a leg to stand on." His joke causes a round of chuckles from the table, lightening the mood. Ophelia playfully hits Avery Sr. with a dry washcloth. "Quit it," she orders with a smirk. Avery Sr. refuses to let go of the issue, arguing, "Ophelia, our son is not his usual self today, and I aim to find out why. Now, what is it, boy? You could tell your old pa." A brief moment passes that feels like forever. Avery takes in a deep, relaxing breath. Young Avery takes a deep breath, steeling himself, and finally states, "Ma told me Banker Woodrow ain't a bigot." Quick and defensive, Ophelia protests, "I did not, boy. You a lie. A bold-faced lie. I just let you know that if he brought his horses here, he can't hate all coloured folks. Men love they animals, some even more than their own wives." She stares sarcastically across the table at Avery Sr. Avery Sr. arches an eyebrow at the slick jab. "Is that so, woman?" he muses aloud, offering her a burning gaze with an unmistakable, lustful gleam in his eyes. Ophelia begins to slyly toe his leg beneath the table, and with that, the issue concluded. William instinctively picks up on the sexual tension and excuses himself, tactfully taking young Avery with him, where he then escorts him to see John and Billy. William had been courting their eldest sister, Sarah, recently, so he figured he'd pay her a visit. Chapter 3. Days passed and days turned into weeks. On a beaming Sunday, near in the afternoon right after church. The three males made their weekly trek into the woods. In his haste, young Avery forgot his waterskin. His father tells him, "Go on back. Me and William will head on over to our secondary haunt. If you run, you won't miss." His words die off suddenly as an arrow pierces his chest. War cries erupt around them as several natives burst from concealment in the woods, intent to claim their lives. William's rifle raises in an instant, thundering the brutal call of death. "Pa!" Avery Jr. cries out, going to the aid of his wounded father. "No!" his father shouts, face in a grimace of pain, gathering his strength, shoving young Avery down out of harm's way while shouldering his rifle. The scene unfolded in slow motion to Avery Jr. William kills two attackers, one with a direct chest blast that leaves the man dead before he hits the ground, the other with a gruesome shot to the face, stilling his war cry forever. He then encounters a third attacker, blocking a tomahawk blow with the length of his rifle, at which point he jacks the butt of the weapon across the man's jaw, dropping him flat. In the ceaseless assault, another creeps up behind him and plunges a knife into his unprotected back as Avery sought to warn him. William grunts in agony and collapses. Young Avery shoulders his rifle and fires off a round, stunning the native. The next shot sends him straight into the afterlife. Meanwhile, even though he'd been wounded, his father gunned down several others with shocking skill and efficiency. A sudden silence blankets the area, strange in its quietude. William lay unmoving, face down where he fell after being stabbed. A great deal of blood soaks his back, dark and ominous. Avery Sr. staggers heavily, the adrenaline rush beginning to fade, which was the only thing keeping him on his feet. Young Avery snaps back to alertness and rushes to help support him. With weak and ragged breaths, Avery Sr. directs him. "Let's get me over there by that tree." Young Avery obeys, but he's unable to halt the tears welling in his eyes. "Now don't you go turning soft on me, boy. Don't you dare. You hear me?" His father softly chides. "Yes, Pa. I think William... I think he dead." His eyes locate William's still form. Avery Sr. grasps his son's chin to guide his eyes away. "Look at me. I'm dying. I ain't fixin' to make it," he says bluntly. As young Avery tries to argue, he hushes him. "I prepared you for this. You know exactly what you need to know to make it in life. Your ma's gonna need you. You're the man of the house now. Be strong. You hear me?" Avery only nods, feeling numb inside. His father finishes saying, "Tell your mother I love her, and that she's my sunshine. You too, little man." Then suddenly he was gone. It's the first instance to which he referred to young Avery as a man. Tears flow freely from Avery as he buries his face against his father's chest, the scent of him flooding his consciousness. Subsequently, a groan of anguish escapes him. The burst of raw emotion transforms his grief to anger. At that moment, the native William knocked out. With the butt of his rifle begins to awaken. Deep inside of Avery Jr., a blind, primal rage consumes him. He wails terribly and dives onto the man while drawing his hunting knife. He plunges the blade hilt deep into the man over and over again, screaming true murder until the man stops moving and is only a bloody mass of death. Spent and breathless, young Avery gathers himself and collects his father's and Williams's weapons and personal effects. Though burdensome, he refuses to leave them behind. Approaching the ranch, he's suddenly hit with a powerful sense of wrongness. Naturally, he applies the feeling to the tragic events surrounding William and his father, but as he quietly enters the house, he's met with lustful sounds of intercourse, bed creaking, wild moans, and loud grunts coming from his parents' bedroom. Confused, he unloads his burden and advances on the room. He directly opens the door. So involved were the two secret lovers in their disgusting shenanigans, Ophelia and the banker Woodrow. They fail to notice him, stark naked, on his belated father's bed. Ophelia knelt on all fours, with Woodrow mounting her from behind, thrusting into her like an animal in heat. Ophelia moaned and urged him for more. Avery stood stock still, appalled, frozen in place as his brain sought to right itself. Then, in utter disrespect to his newly belated father, banker Woodrow suddenly screams, "Your nigger husband can't love you like this, girl. Isn't that right?" Adding insult to injury, Ophelia takes no offence. Instead, she answers favourably, "That worthless nigger could never love me like you do, honey. You a real man."
It all comes together for young Avery. His world collapsed and crashed in sheer totality. His mind began to spiral into an empty hole where nothing and no one mattered. He snaps. The gun blast blows a tunnel in the centre of Woodrow's back, a brutal force that pitches him forward on top of Ophelia, who then has to struggle out from under his dead weight. Scrambling free, she spots the freshly made carcass of her despicable partner and shrieks in stark terror. Just then, she catches sight of her son, young Avery, staring down the barrel of his smoking gun with cold, dead eyes. "Baby." The rest of her comment never surfaces, as a bullet knocks her forehead through the rear of her skull, spraying her thoughts across the wall. She drops comically into a seated position against the wall. Young Avery, no longer the innocent boy that set out to hunt with his father that fateful afternoon, looks into his mother's unseeing eyes, her mouth open in an O shape of astonishment. He whispers, "Pa says, you're his sunshine."
If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Big Freaking Tales.